welcome our webinar presenter for the month. He's going to talk about your productivity map. This is Dr. Matt Jarman, who is a productivity psychologist, and an ADHD coach, which is going to give us some really great tools. Matt, if you want to introduce yourself a little more, and go ahead and get started.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. Um, yeah. So I'm Matt, and let me share my screen here. Go like this. Can you all see that? Okay. I'm gonna assume that's a yes. So,
Yes.
my name is Matt, and I'm excited to talk to you about this productivity map. This is something I've been working on for a long time, um, as both a productivity psychologist and ADHD coach, and so I'm hoping that you'll walk away with some real actionable understandings and tools. A quick background for why I'm I'm doing this today. I had a great conversation with Catherine about kind of some often kind of associations between disorders of the corpus callosum with ADHD and other executive function difficulties. And so I was excited to kind of think about how my approach and techniques can be used with people who are struggling with these sorts of things, particularly in a productivity context. I think of productivity as basically goal-directed action. So whether it's for paid work, whether it's for personal projects, anything you're trying to accomplish, productivity is going to be important there. So that's what I mean when I use that term. So the plan for this workshop is to first talk about the big picture, some different productivity paths that people often find themselves on. Then I'll introduce my productivity map. We'll talk about the right productivity tools. So those are the tools that are right for your particular situation, and then where to go from here. I want you to start by first thinking of a task or project that you have been procrastinating on or feeling resistance towards. It would be great if there's one that you've very recently, maybe today or in the past week, been procrastinating on, or it could be a recurring task or project that you know you often resist doing. But bring that to mind, and if you have anything to write down, you can jot a note of what that task is, because throughout this, I'll ask you to think about that task. And now also jot down any ideas that you have for how you think you should be working through this. So how do you think you should be working through the procrastination and decreasing the resistance you feel? If you don't know, that's fine too. I just want to give you a chance to kind of get a sense for your baseline understanding of how to work through it, and then I'll give you some other ideas moving forward. So go ahead and write that down now. I'll give you just a few seconds. And keep that handy. So I want to kind of set our kind of motivation for learning this stuff by talking about the big picture of the typical way that people kind of try to become more productive, and then a better way. So the typical path is you're stuck. And I've been stuck myself. I should say that I have ADHD, and throughout particularly my undergraduate and graduate studies, it was a struggle, definitely a struggle. Uh, and and so I get those challenges, and they've been real for me for a very long time. But part of the reason that I studied psychology, particularly work-related psychology, and got a PhD in that, was because I wanted a better understanding of how to kind of get out of that hole of being stuck. So people often start here in this stuck place, and then they try something. People tell them try harder, which is not helpful advice, by the way. And and they try, and maybe you see a little bump in your productivity. That's possible. Um, but sadly, oftentimes it doesn't last. And then what? What you really want is to feel in control, right? You want to have a sense that you have things under control, you have a handle on things, but rarely do you actually feel that way in your work. What ends up happening is you seek out techniques and tools to help. You'll listen to what people tell you, read books, listen to podcasts, right? And you try things out, but oftentimes they don't stick, or they don't really do the trick. So let's talk about why that is. A more productive path is it starts in the same spot, but you then find a map that helps you navigate and figure out what's going on. So that is the productivity dashboard that I'm going to be sharing with you today. This is kind of a stylized version of it. And this is a framework that I've been using for a number of years with clients, and I use it myself, and it's extremely helpful, very effective at really understanding what's going on. And so by the end of this presentation, you should have an understanding of how to use it in your own work. And the idea is once you have this map, then suddenly things start to make sense. You start to understand what your brain is telling you when you are distracted and procrastinating. Like, what does that mean, and what should you be doing about it? Once you have that understanding, then you can identify the right tools, the tools that will actually help you in your current situation. So instead of looking at these laundry lists of tools and techniques and online articles, those aren't the ones that you need most of the time. The map helps you find the tools that you do need. And once you have that, then you get to a place ideally of being unstoppable. So eagerly productive is the phrase I like to describe, where you're not just getting things done, but you're excited about it. You're eager to do so. And that's made possible when you're using the right tools. So this is the goal. This is my productivity goal for everyone. And what we're going to focus on today is the map that is necessary to get us there. So I'm going to introduce you to the map. I'll share some resources for that, and I'll walk you through how to use it. And we'll also touch on some examples of tools to give examples, but that won't be the main focus tonight. We're really going to focus on this map. So here's a simple version of the map. Uh, there are four key drivers of your productivity at any given time. This is a framework that I've developed and created over the past kind of 7+ years. And basically, it has to do with how you manage your mind, your tasks, your time, and your pulls at any given time. I'll explain those, particularly the pull piece, in a moment. And I'm going to share this with you all. So this is a PDF that you'll be able to print out. I would encourage you to do so. And it will serve as kind of a guide to help you figure out how high or low you are in each of these different productivity controls. Okay, and I'll explain now how to use this so that then you'll have this resource and be able to use it whenever you want. So first, let me explain each of the four key areas. First is mind control. So this is managing your mental energy, right? Oftentimes, the work we do is cognitively depleting. And so even if we're not physically tired, we're mentally tired. And there are techniques that we can do to increase that. Managing your thoughts is another component of mind control, and then your emotions. So techniques that help you to manage these things would fall in the mind control category. And this is the what you'll see in the handout that I give you. And so these are the questions that can help you to assess your mind control levels at any given time. So right now, you can ask yourself, if you think about that task that you've been procrastinating on, that I asked you to think of at the beginning, you can ask yourself, when you're procrastinating or you're feeling that resistance, Do you have the mental energy needed to tackle that task? Do you feel ready to focus on it? If your answer was yes, definitely, then you're high in mind control and you're in the green. That's great. If you're kind of somewhere in the middle, then you're yellow. And if you're low, then you're in the red. What I want you to do now quickly in the chat, go ahead and enter a number. So a three, it would be high, a two would be medium, and one would be low. Okay, so go ahead and do that now. And so I see there's a one, there's a three. Right now, one. Yeah, yeah, I get that. Very good. So this tells us kind of where we are with mind control. If you're low, if you're at a one or a two, that's something that you would probably want to address. Like that would likely be one of the sources of your procrastination. And so you'd want to then identify some techniques that would help you to increase that. Now, if you struggle with ADHD or executive function challenges in general, this is essentially getting at the executive function piece. And most of the time, particularly with ADHD, we kind of just assume that, okay, yeah, people with ADHD tend to have lower levels of executive function, and we just kind of accept that. But there are techniques that we can do that will increase those levels in the moment when you need it. And I've spent a ton of time trying to identify those techniques because those are the techniques that really got me through graduate school and kind of the really intense kind of work periods. So so there are techniques that can help us to increase our mind control. Now, in the chat, I want you to type one thing that you're currently thinking about mind control and one thing that you're currently wondering, if anything, as we kind of come to the conclusion of my introduction of mind control. What are you thinking about it? Go ahead and enter anything in the chat now. And anything that you're wondering, we may also be able to sounds tiring. Yeah. Yeah. Well, can I stay consistent with it? Yeah. One of the wonderful things about the mind control techniques is when they work, that becomes its own incentive to use them. So I use these techniques daily because I know that I will not get by without them. And so once they start working, it becomes much easier actually to stick with them, particularly the mind control techniques. Okay, that was mind control. Now let's talk about task control, the second one. Task control has three components. One is capturing tasks. So recording them somewhere. When you have something that you, oh yeah, I have to do this thing. Where is that going to go? It shouldn't go on some post-it somewhere, right? It should have a special place where you always know that that's where it goes, whether that's a task management app or a notebook that you have. There should be a, a consistent process that you use. And then you need a process for organizing your tasks. How do you decide and indicate which ones should be done sooner than others? And then lastly, how do we break them down? This is really important for particularly the big, daunting tasks. How do we break them down into smaller pieces? So to determine how we're doing with task control, we can ask ourselves, do you know which task you should be working on right now? Now, with the procrastination example, it's you know which task that is, so that's less relevant in that case. But does the task feel easy to get started on? That's a different question. So if you think, yeah, really easy to get started on, that would be high. Somewhere in the middle, yellow, and then low would be red. Go ahead and think about that task you're procrastinating on, and in the chat, enter high, medium, or low. A 3, for high, 2, or 1 for low. Go ahead and do that now. When you are high in task control, the way I think of that feeling is like you have task focus. That's the image below here. So you feel like instead of having just a ton of things kind of floating around, you're able to narrow down and really focus in. So that's what it feels like in my mind. So we have people, yeah, we have twos, ones, yeah, between 2 and 1. Yeah. Okay. So that would suggest that the task control would be a useful thing to do some techniques for, because that is likely to be holding you back when it comes to the procrastination. Okay. And I should say that in different situations, one task you're procrastinating on might have different levels of these factors, right? So it can change over time, at different times of your life, at different with different types of projects and tasks. So that can vary. If there's anything that you want to share that you're thinking about task control now, or that you're wondering, you can enter it now in the chat. I'll come back to anything that you're wondering at the end, and we can reflect on that and answer any questions there. Now I want to talk about time control. So time control has to do with how we use our limited time. And we all have limited time in the day, right? Um, we only have so much time to get a lot of things done. So part of it is how do we fit activities in? We have these things we have to do. Where are we going to put these other things? Another important element of this is making trade-off decisions. This is really important and something that we often do in what I would call a mindless manner. So we'll often, for example, spend way too long on one task, which leaves very little time for some other task. And so we've essentially decided, or we haven't decided, we've through our actions, we've decided that we're gonna do a trade-off where we're gonna do more on this and less on that other thing. But it's often mindless. And often at the end of the day, we reflect back and we think, oh man, I shouldn't have spent so long on this. I wish I had gotten this other thing done. That was more important. So we want to make those trade-off decisions something that you're aware of and that you're making intentionally. And ideally, time control makes it easier for you to be aware of the trade-off decisions and help you to make them based on the goals you have for how you spend your time. So that's why we have these 2 hourglasses. So it's like the hourglass from one activity is being poured into the other. And then the last piece, I think effective time control or effective time management helps you to get energized. So this is this is when you think about procrastination, for example. When you're procrastinating at the very end, when it's really close to the deadline, you you suddenly feel this strong urgency, right? You finally feel the urgency and the energy to do the thing that you've been procrastinating on, right? So ideally, effective time control would make it so that you feel that urgency, but in a more kind of manageable and healthy way earlier in the process so that you don't have to procrastinate. If you could create that a manageable sense of urgency earlier, then you don't need to rely on waiting until you're out of time, right? So that's the other piece of effective time control. So with that in mind, to figure out how you're doing with your time control, you can ask yourself these questions. Have you budgeted a specific amount of time for the task that you're working on? Do you know which other task or tasks you won't be able to do if you go over time on this one? Okay. So if you're if you haven't done these things or you don't know these things, then you're lower on this. And if you have been really good about saying, okay, I'm going to spend this long on it, and these are the tasks that I also have to do, and then you're high, and that's great. When you're high on time control, I think of it as feeling like time awareness. You're more aware of all the different things you have to do and kind of when you're going to do them and for how long. And so that awareness makes it easier for you to be intentional about how you spend your time during the day. Go ahead and in the chat, enter a number, one, two, or three, for how you would characterize your time control in relation to that task that you've been procrastinating on. We have a one, we have a two, and one. Yes. And this is common, right? Time control is another, mind, really all of them, but in particular, mind control and time control are common culprits for procrastination. If there's anything that comes to mind right now that you're currently thinking about time control or wondering, go ahead and enter it in the chat, and we can come back to anything you're wondering later too. But I want to give you the chance to write it down now. The last one that I want to talk about is pull control. Now, pull control is perhaps the most unique to my framework. I think you'll find task management and time management are spoken about all over the place, and there are some different mind management techniques out there as well. Pull control is the one that you're not going to find in most other places, and I also think it's the most important for ADHD in particular. So first, let me explain what a mental pull is. So, when you feel pulled towards an activity, when you feel eager to dive into it, like you just can't resist, you can't stop thinking about it, that's a mental pull. And I think that the ADHD mind is by nature, by its very nature, is pull seeking. So it's often frequently seeking out mental pulls, seeking out activities that pull it in. And does this for different reasons, but that explains one of the most common characteristics of the ADHD mind, which is the distractibility. The ADHD mind is often seeking distractions because the current task that it's engaged in is not pulling it in. When you're thinking of the task that you should do, but yeah, you're kind of resisting it, you're not really excited about it, it's not pulling you in. So distraction seeking is just pull seeking. You're looking for other activities that will pull you in. The the ADHD mind is really seeking those out because executive function is on the lower side. It's really hard for us to push through tasks that we know we should do, but we don't really want to do. So the ADHD mind looks for tasks that will pull it in because if it's pulling you in, it doesn't take a lot of executive function to get yourself to do the thing. So it makes sense, right? That we're looking for things that it will be easy for you to dive into. Unfortunately, many of your work tasks are not so easy to dive into. And so that's where there's this mismatch. But instead of just accepting that your task, your boring task, is just boring and you just have to push through it, there are things that you can do to actually get excited about that task. How can you create at least a small mental pull for that boring task that you're resisting? So there are different techniques that I've been experimenting with and developing for doing that. And so basically, managing your mental pulls involves identifying the things that do pull you in, the activities that do pull you in, creating mental pulls. So that's creating pulls where there aren't any. So turning a boring task into a task that pulls you, even even if it's just by a little bit. It doesn't have to be a huge pull, but even just a little pull will help you overcome some of that resistance. And then the last element is maintaining those pulls. Sometimes you feel excited and then but then that kind of dips pretty quickly. So how do we maintain that? Or in some cases, we might actually want to weaken a pull if the pull is for a distraction activity. In other words, an activity that isn't aligned with your goals right now for how you spend your time. you might need to weaken the pull of those distractions. So these are the kind of elements of managing your mental pulls. And I should say that the goal is not to always feel pulled by all of your activities. That's not realistic and not the goal. But I think to thrive with ADHD requires that you feel a mental pull towards a larger proportion of your activities, of your tasks. That's how the ADHD mind really thrives. So with that in mind, we can think of pull control and kind of assess our uh, pull control levels with these questions. Do you have an angle for the task that excites you? Do you feel eager to do the task? And that because that eagerness is, I think, what pull control feels like when it's high, right? So here we have this example of kind of a chisel that's turned a boulder that just is kind of what you feel like you're doing when you're trying to push through a task, and it's turned it into a magnet that's pulling you in. So go ahead and in the chat, enter 3, 2, or 1 for high, medium, or low in terms of the extent to which that task was pulling at you. You felt a mental pull for the task. Yeah, we have 1, we have 2, 1. It's very rare that a task you're procrastinating on has a strong mental pull, right? Because then you probably wouldn't procrastinate on it. So, um, so yeah, so that isn't surprising. Okay, jot down any thoughts you have or things that you're wondering about pull control, and I'll quickly look through the other ones to see if there are any other questions or comments. Yeah, and we're gonna get more practicals still, yes. Um, how do you change the guilt you feel when putting time on this task over others? Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think at the end, let's try to come back to that if we have time. That will take us in a slightly different direction. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've worked through these productivity control gauges. Okay. And hopefully it now makes sense. The questions are very simple. And the idea is, let's say you're procrastinating, you're resisting a task right now in this moment, and you want to get in a better place. You want to be making progress on it. What do? You pause and you assess what are which of these are you low in right now? Because that's likely the reason. So you figure that out. You can use these questions to ask yourself, and this just takes a few seconds once you've done it a couple times, right? So you can very quickly say, okay, am I high or low in mind control? Oh yeah, I'm low in that. And you go through these. And one thing I recommend when you print this out, you could even use like a paper clip or a binder clip to put that clip so that you can see, okay, I'm in the green for pull control, or I'm in the red for mind control, etc. So once you know that, then you can identify the tools that you need to to move forward. Okay. But you need to figure this out first. Otherwise, you're just going to be trying, whatever productivity technique you read about online, but that may not be what you need. So this is a necessary step for assessing your needs in that moment. So you figure that out, and then you identify the tools, the techniques. So I'll give you some examples of techniques. There are many different techniques, so we won't be able to cover a ton of them, but I'll give you an example for each. So this technique might be if you try anything from what I share with you today, I hope it'll be this, because this is kind of a game changer for many people. This is a technique that I developed called the 2-minute mental restart. And so this will help with mind control, particularly when you're feeling mentally depleted. So when your cognitive resources have been depleted, your executive function is particularly low, this is a way to restore that, to kind of replenish that in a pretty quick, short amount of time. So all you do while sitting is you set a timer for 2 minutes. It could be a little longer too if you want, but you might as well start with two. Uh, I think two is a good minimum though, so probably ideally shouldn't be shorter. Um, Close your eyes and let your mind do its thing. This is a space where the whole day you're spending kind of directing your attention and your mind, and that's tiring. So this is a chance for your mind to kind of shake things out and relax a little bit. So your mind will, thoughts will come up, and that's fine. You just let them pass while you're closing your eyes. If there are distractions in your space, you could also have headphones, and like instrumental music on in the background. So this technique is is wonderful because it's very easy to do. You can be sitting at your office and you can close your eyes, you have headphones in, nobody's going to notice or really think much of it. Um, just takes 2 minutes. It's very quick. So I do this when I just notice that that I'm kind of mentally slow and kind of sluggish. I'm having to kind of reread things, and I'm just kind of feeling a little out of it or distracted. My mind control is low. So I'll just right then and there set my timer, close my eyes, 2 minutes, and it really can have a huge impact. So please, please, please give this a try. I have many people uh, who rave about this, and they use it all the time. Next, is yeah, Patrick. When we get to yeah, so Patrick mentioned that, the issue of self-awareness and not realizing when time has passed. So the time control piece will address that in a second. Now, remember that there are different techniques out there. And so this is one mind control technique, but there are others. And so if you want to look for others, you could search online for techniques for managing your mental energy or your thoughts or your emotions. Um, Try them out, experiment, and when you find ones that make a difference in your experience of mind control, then stick with those, right? Um, so that's part of the idea, is with this ability to kind of assess kind of where you are, you can also assess, which techniques are helpful or not. So that was mind control. Now for task control, a common technique is task chunking. So breaking tasks down into actionable steps. And if it's a big task, just focus on the first few actionable steps. You don't need to do all of the steps because that will be its own kind of daunting task. The piece that you might not often hear about though is, if you still feel some resistance or it still feels daunting, um, you can break those first steps into even smaller pieces that are laughably small. So just ridiculously easy first steps. So let's say you need to send this email that you've been dreading. You you can, in your list of steps, and these steps should be written down in some form, right? Not just in your head. Okay. The first step could be open a new email, right? There's no challenge there. But having a few steps that are that ridiculously easy allows you to just start doing something to pick up some momentum, and it'll make it easier to then go into the more substantive steps. So this can be extremely helpful. Um, Remember to break those steps down as small as they need to be, for you to then, hit the ground running. For other techniques, on this topic, you can search for task management techniques in general, and you'll find a lot. And then again, experiment with which ones are actually helping you to increase your experience of task control. Now, time control. So it's hard for us to keep track of time, right? And so much of task and time management involves the use of external tools to do things so that we don't have to rely on our cognitive functioning to do it. So, for example, writing tasks down instead of, for task control, instead of trying to remember them. By writing them down, by getting them outside of our head, it frees up cognitive space. We don't have to be working at remembering that. With time control here, using external alarms is a great way to offload the time awareness demand, right? Because yeah, we lose track of time. Particularly if our executive function is already low to start with, just getting the task done is going to take the kind of is going to demand a lot of cognitive resources, and so we won't have any enough left over to keep track of time as it passes. So instead of trying to set an alarm, so this is where it's important if you've kind of blocked out a period of time and then once you've blocked it out, set what I call a transition alarm, an alarm that is a reminder when you get close to that transition point. So let's say you say, okay, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to do this. You set an alarm for 20 minutes out. And that way you realize, oh yeah, okay, I'm running out of time. Now, an important piece with the use of alarms is make sure that you either snooze or set a new alarm if you're not acting on it right in that moment. So if you set that transition alarm and it goes off in 20 minutes, and that means you have 10 minutes left, you shouldn't just turn it off and say, yeah, okay, I'll stop in 10 minutes. You won't. I mean, probably won't. Uh, you still need that alarm to be going as a reminder. So I would snooze the alarm, and then on my phone, when I snooze it, it's like 8 or 9 minutes later, it goes off again. And I would either continue snoozing or ideally, if I find myself having to snooze multiple times, then that suggests that I need to kind of reassess how I'm allocating time. And so I would make new trade-off decisions. Like, do I want to continue work on this or and work less time on something else? Or is it time to shift to a new task? Based on that, you either can set a new alarm for the current task or shift to the next one and set an alarm for that one. So the goal here is increasing time awareness through this external tool. So transition reminders and alarms are extremely helpful, and I use them constantly, and I highly encourage you to give it a try if you don't already. If you're looking for other techniques, time management techniques, you can Google that, and there are different options out there. Um, Again, experiment and see what works, uh, and and then stick with the ones that are helpful. Now, the last area is pull control. Now, here are some sample questions that will help you um, get in the right mindset. So, what are some ways to approach this task that are more creative, that would surprise or impress others in a good way, that would make use of my other interests, that use different tools or methods? So maybe a different app that you're excited about, or creative uses for AI tools that are more effective or efficient. So these pull techniques, um, or these questions help you get in a different mindset. Oftentimes, we have this task, we're not looking forward to it, and we just push ourselves through it. We don't stop to think, how can I approach this in a different way? And so these questions will help you do that. Now, in terms of other things to search, I find that I've yet to find useful resources on this online. It just doesn't seem like something that people really talk about or try to do. So that's why I've been kind of creating my own methods for doing it. I have three different categories of techniques that help you to do this. But I think these questions are a good way to start kind of adopting that mindset. Okay. So what have we spoken about? We've spoken about these productivity gauges, these productivity control gauges that allow you to assess where you are in these four domains. So what? That map is critical for identifying the right tools that allow you to be eagerly productive, right? And I just gave you some examples of tools that could be used. So when your mind control is low, maybe a 2-minute restart would be what you need. When your task control is low, have you adequately broken them down into small actionable pieces? Okay. What next? Use the map, right? Print out the document, and then find the right techniques for you. It will take some experimentation in the beginning. You can look online, you can work with me if you want, but find techniques that help increasing each of those areas. In the chat, I'd like you to type as we this is the conclusion of what I plan on talking about. Go ahead and type one thing you're currently thinking about what we've discussed, one thing you're currently feeling about what we've discussed, and if you have any lingering questions, one thing you're currently wondering. Go ahead and do that. Yeah, Catherine asked how you can work with me. I'll talk about that in a moment. Thank you. And yes, Sarah, I'll share these slides as well. Okay, go ahead and post any of those thoughts if you have them, thoughts, feelings, things you're wondering. To answer your question, so if this stuff resonates with you, if you go to my website, oh, that's kind of weird. Why is that? Oh, I can move it here. No, I can't. Um, there we go. You can look on productiveforgood.org is my website, and you can sign up for the newsletter. Um, there's also a productivity self-assessment there that is a free self-assessment where you can kind of get a general sense for where you typically fall on these 4 different productivity controls, which can be useful moving forward. Um, the main ways that you can work with me if you want are through one-on-one coaching. It's weekly coaching that I do, or through group programs. I offer group programs typically every few months. I'll probably offer another in the next month or two. And so there's on the website, there's a wait list if you're interested in that. You can sign up for that, and then I'll let you know when the next one is scheduled. And I do these programs, this coaching for students, professionals, and teams. And the my goal for this was to give you a map and a framework so that you wouldn't. I don't want you to feel that you have to work with me to use these techniques. The map is extremely helpful and important. So I hope you feel that you have some kind of direction on where you could go to figure out the techniques that are really right for you. Of course, I'm biased, right? I've spent a long time developing and identifying techniques that work for me and my clients. And so if you work with me, I would give you a toolbox of techniques that fit in each of these 4 domains. Um, I'll now happy to take any questions. I'd also love if you can let me know what you think of this workshop. I really appreciate the feedback and the opportunity to improve this for future workshops. So please, I'll put this link in the chat, but you can also see it here. Um, but otherwise, let me look to see if there are any other
So we do have some
questions.
questions. I don't know if
Great.
you wanted to touch on, we had someone ask about their issue with their own self-awareness. They don't realize when they're getting distracted. I know you did touch on the alarm and
Yeah.
timer, but I don't know if you had anything more for that.
Yeah. So part of the self-awareness piece will come from mind control techniques. And so when our mind control is low, then we have less kind of cognitive bandwidth to notice those things. And so there are other practices. There's a particular meditation practice that I teach that I think is particularly conducive for the ADHD mind. But techniques like that, and even the 2-minute mental restart, will help you to it'll make it easier for you to notice those sorts of things. Also, if you're using the timers, the alarms, for example, um, if you're when you're using those timers and alarms and you're trying to remember how I mentioned that feeling of being energized, um, that will also decrease your mind's tendency to seek out distractions, because uh, now you feel this urgency, and that becomes its own type of a pull. So using timers and alarms in that way can be really helpful. Uh, and yes, Sandra said, yeah, glad to hear the confirmation that ADD difficulties are real and not just laziness or lack of self-discipline. I think as a productivity psychologist, I think laziness and self-discipline are two of the words or phrases that I dislike the most. I think they just show more than anything a lack of understanding of the drivers of productivity. I would never call anybody lazy or lacking self-discipline. They're just lacking these techniques. Like most of us don't have these techniques, and that's why. And they don't have a map, so they don't know what they should be doing. They don't have the guidance, and so that's what the map gives you. So yes, I would. I don't think it's ever laziness or self-discipline. It's just a lack of the techniques that they need to move forward. Uh, any other questions? And oh, I see. Are you waving at me, Catherine? I just saw you. Okay.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
sorry. I was saying we have another question.
oh, good.
Sorry about that. About how do you not continue to hit snooze over and over again?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So ideally, when it comes to time control, ideally you're blocking out your time, and which means you're kind of planning out how you're going to be spending your time in different chunks, and so if you're trying to stick to that plan, and ideally I recommend that people kind of update their plan as they go. So if you are going to snooze, you should then update your those blocks and decide, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 more minutes on this. Where are those 10 minutes going to come from? Right? And then make the adjustment that way. By forcing yourself to go through that process, it also forces you to kind of prioritize. And you might say, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't. I actually need all the time that I've allocated for these other tasks, and so I'm gonna just force myself to stop here. Maybe make a note of what I was in the middle of, and what I should come back to next time, and then switch tasks. So blocking out your time in that way and being intentional about those trade-off decisions will help you to prioritize. In some cases, you might decide, you know what? I keep on snoozing because this task is just taking much longer now that I see than I had anticipated. And that's fine as long as you're the one who's deciding, okay, I'm going to spend longer on this task. Then that's great. From my perspective, the goal is not necessarily that you get everything done that you planned, because we're never going to do that. The goal is that you finish your day and you don't look back and regret that you know, worked on this longer than you should have, or you didn't make, or you weren't aware of this thing. So you want systems in place that will help kind of encourage you to be making the decisions throughout the day about how you want to spend your time. I hope that helps clarify that.
We had another comment. I don't know if you want to touch on it. Someone said, priorities change constantly, too difficult to juggle. So some things always drop to the bottom of the list. So maybe how do we keep those things from continuing to get pushed down to the bottom of the list?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that assumes that, I mean, if it's at the bottom of the list, it sounds like you're saying it gets to the bottom of the list, though it really is of higher priority. It's just you're struggling to make time for it. So there are some options, such as kind of oftentimes earlier in the day. This, of course, varies with people's different types of work and whatnot. But often we have a little bit more control over things that happen earlier in the day. So maybe prioritizing doing certain things first thing in the day might decrease the chance of that kind of getting bumped out by kind of things that unexpectedly come up later. Um, The other another option is just when being intentional about how you're managing your time, um, doing your best to, when these new things come up, add them to your time plan and decide, okay, how am I going to adjust this so that hopefully I can still get these other things done. One of the ideas is uh, if you're doing a good job of managing, of kind of having this time plan, um, it should create that sense of urgency to, okay, I'm going to get this thing done as efficiently as possible because I know I have these other things I need to do. So it ideally will actually make you more efficient because you have that urgency, which should then make it easier to get more things done. And so hopefully then you will be more likely to complete those tasks that keep getting bumped to the bottom of the list. But I know it's difficult. The other piece though is again, it always goes back to this map, this productivity map. Check to make sure your mind control is high, right? And et cetera, your task control, all of them. Because it's very common for us to kind of get overwhelmed and bombarded and easily kind of distracted when our mind control is low, for example. I also want to mention, I just had this thought that with this handout, there are numbers and mind control has a number one next to it, task control has a number two, time control has a number three, and pull control has a number four. That's the order that I introduce them, and that's the order that I would recommend that you work through them. So start with mind control, and then if and then task control, and then time, and then pull. And sometimes you might find that you just need to, it's just mind control, or maybe it's just task control, but go through them in that order, is my recommendation.
Thank you so
Uh,
much, Matt. This was a fantastic topic and really great information and tools you've given us.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. I'm glad. Yeah. And if anyone has questions, always feel free to email me um, and reach out through the website. Yeah, I'm happy to share this stuff.
well, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for coming on the call today. And Matt, if you weren't here at the beginning, Matt said that he would send me an email with the worksheets and things. So we will make sure to get those out to everybody. And then you can look for this video again on the NODCC's YouTube channel in case you want to go through it again for some reminders and refreshing. So thank you all for coming tonight.
Thanks, everyone.